Meet Jen. As a busy professional, she's trying to improve her physical health. So she joins the gym and becomes more cognizant of her eating patterns. But as a past Psych 1 Exo 3 student, she knows our brain has a big impact on how we feel and behave. So she wonders, can she use her mind to improve her physical health? Let's find out. Optimism is a cognitive construct that is one's tendency to expect good things to happen in the future, and is actually related to tons of positive physical health outcomes. Just to name a few, people with higher optimism have lower mortality, experience less pain, and also report fewer physical symptoms of disease. It seems like we're onto something here. Optimism can influence our physical health. But how does this happen? How can just our mind influence something physical like health and disease? And is there a way we can take advantage of this and increase our levels of optimism? So there's two main ways in which optimism can influence physical health. In the first way, people with higher levels of optimism perceive more social supports than people with lower levels of optimism. Humans are a very social species, so these social supports can actually influence our physiology. We see immune responses and neuroendocrine changes that can actually help us fight disease better, which slows disease progression. In the other way, people with higher levels of optimism actually engage in more preventative health behaviors. So think not smoking, eating healthy, and being physically active. These together are going to improve physical health. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I'm not a very optimistic person. Does that mean I'm not going to see these benefits? So I want you all to take a moment and imagine yourself in the future if everything has worked out as well as possible and you've achieved every life goal. Okay, I'll stop you there. I don't want you to get too carried away. So we'll check back in with Jen. She's imagining that she's got her dream job and she's been going on tons of amazing vacations. Also, Ryan Reynolds has suddenly become single and decided that she's the one. So, is being delusional the solution? It actually might just be. What you all just engaged in is known as the best possible self-intervention, and it's a real way to increase optimism. In fact, a meta-analysis found that studies that use the best possible self-intervention to increase optimism actually had greater effect sizes than studies that used cognitive behavioral therapy or self-compassion interventions to increase optimism. So, what can we conclude so far? We can conclude that higher levels of optimism are linked with better physical health outcomes. However, we cannot conclude that optimism is a cure. There can be dangerous outcomes if we start to think that positive thinking can treat or cure disease. We need to avoid leaps in logic that lead to false ideas like, oh, they just got sick because they weren't optimistic enough, or I'm sure they could have gotten better if only they were happier. But this shouldn't stop us from exploring the underlying mechanisms behind this association between physical health and optimism. It also shouldn't stop us from investigating interventions that could be beneficial. There's real data here. We just need to make sure that when we're consuming this information, we don't make leaps in logic that could be deleterious. So let's do a review of what we talked about so far. Optimism is associated with many positive physical health outcomes, and this can happen in two ways. People who are more optimistic perceive more social supports, which leads to physiological changes and better health. As well, people with higher levels of optimism engage in more preventative health behaviors, which increases their physical health. There are also interventions that do exist that can increase our levels of optimism. And just because optimism is associated with physical health, we cannot assume that optimism is a cure. So now that we've reviewed, let's check back in with Jen. She's underwent the best possible self-intervention, which successfully increased her levels of optimism. Now with higher levels of optimism, she's more likely to engage in preventative health measures, like staying consistent at the gym and maintaining her healthy eating habits. These together are going to lead to more positive physical health outcomes, which is what we wanted from the start. So, what does this mean for you? Next time you're thinking about improving your physical health, sign up for an optimism intervention along with your gym membership. Your mind is powerful and you should use it to your advantage to improve your physical health. Thank you.